Made it. Good morning. Well, I got a question for you. How many of you would like more peace in your life? Anybody want more peace in their life? Would it surprise you to understand that maybe through your habits, you are keeping peace from yourself? You keep yourself in turmoil. And we'll go into that a little bit more in a few moments, but first I'd like to explore a little bit more about what peace is. A lot of times people will think, well, if we were totally at peace, we'd be stagnant. And that isn't the way it is. Now, hopefully some of you that have fished might understand what I'm saying, but you take a river, and if you go to fish, you don't go to fish where it's okay, is it on now? So anyway, what happens is we don't go fishing where there are rapids and where it's rough and wild, because the fish are busy just trying to exist. They're just trying to get through the rapids so that they can get to the other side. Where you go to fish usually is where the water is a little quieter, where it's fresh and it's flowing, but it isn't that wild rapids that we see sometimes. Because when you have the calm, when you have the more quiet, then what do the fish do? They eat, they breed, they're happy, basically. So they're more likely to snatch your lure when you go into that. So peace is like that. This is very distracting, sorry. There goes. So peace is kind of like that. When we are in turmoil, all we can think about is reacting and getting done with whatever it is we have to do. For instance, when you were in the fire and they said, you might have to evacuate, you probably reacted first before you thought of anything calming. But then after a few moments, maybe you realize you're in an area where you don't need to rush out. You don't need to rush away. You can take your time, gather what you need to gather. Now, I grant you, there were some people that had to rush, but many of us didn't. I know I lived over here, and my first impulse was, oh, we got to get out. But then I thought about it. I've got a 92-year-old mother, which is very hard to travel. She has a really hard time traveling. So I didn't want to get her out in the car and get going. I wanted to stop and think about it. Are we safe? Well, we'll watch the TV. We were safe for a while. So let peace kind of take over and look at the bigger picture. What is happening? What do I need? What don't I need? You know, and so I had my mom pack a suitcase, and I packed a suitcase, and my daughter, and I packed my husband's stuff, and got it in the car and got ready. And then sat and calmed myself and watched and stayed aware, but I didn't freak out. So what peace offers us is that ability not to freak out, not to just react instantly to whatever it is that is going on, because we can't control what's happening out here. We can only control how we react to it. And so we want to react to it. We want to have a choice in that reaction. And we can't do that without having some sort of peace and quiet. And sometimes you need to take that few minutes and do that. So what gets in the way of peace? If we want more peace, what gets in the way of it? Well, we heard about how ego can cause all sorts of problems. It usually stems from fear, and that fear can paralyze us. It can keep us from thinking very straight. But we also have certain habits or reactions to that fear, to the ego that comes up. Now, you might not have all these reactions, but it's good to pinpoint where you may have those reactions so that you can work on them and come to a place where you can make choice. So one of the reactions is, do you find yourself confronting people or arguing people a lot? Because when you're arguing and you have your point of view, you're not listening to anybody else's, are you? You don't want to hear anybody else's. You just want to get your point of view across. It doesn't let us see beyond that when you're always confronting people and thinking that they're against you. Another habit that you might find yourself in is competition. Are you competing somehow with other people or comparing yourself with other people? When I was very young, I walked into a room and there were several really attractive women in the room, and I started comparing myself to them, thinking, oh, you know, I'm short, I'm not tall and leggy, I'm a little overweight, I had all these excuses in comparing myself. And then I suddenly realized, God made us all. So we're all perfect in our own way. Because when I'm comparing myself, I'm comparing to an ideal, a false ideal that has been set in my mind by advertising, by movie stars, and so forth. So that's one way you can start moving yourself out of that comparing, is if you start realizing those things. Another habit that many people get into is chasing or striving. In other words, you have to strive to be the very best. You have to do the best you can at work. You have to do the best at whatever you're doing, because not doing the best means that somehow you've failed. And really, most of this comes from the idea that you don't feel worthy somehow. And worthiness tends to lead to self-doubt, to fear that you aren't good enough for anything. And where does that come from? Well, when you're told as a young child that you were born in sin, it's very easy to come to that conclusion that you can't possibly be worthy of God, because after all, God's perfect and you're far from perfect. But that isn't so, because God doesn't gauge us on that. God doesn't look at each person and say, oh, you didn't do that quite right. I think you need to have a do-over. Although we do get do-overs. Another one is feeling like you always need to be noticed. This is one that I sometimes fall into, and I have to watch myself. So I'll do things like, boy, I know you went to work and you did this, but I did this and I did that, and I come see what I did. So kind of making yourself noticed, always putting yourself in the best light as possible. And like I said, we all have these habits to one degree or another, and some more so than others. One more that I'd like to mention is the more, better, different. More, better, different. You got to have the best car. You've got to have the best house. You got to have the new gadget that came on TV. You got to have that new pillow that is supposed to stay fluffy and doesn't. All these things. You're always striving for more and better and different. And how can you possibly think when all you're doing is striving? When all you're doing is trying to get more, trying to receive more, trying to grab that. And the very last habit, which I think is the most devastating really, is gossip. Gossip is because you're trying to make yourself feel better by making somebody else feel worse. Quite often, because you don't gossip about the good things. You don't see people say, oh, did you see the wonderful thing that so-and-so did and how great it was? And you usually don't hear that as far as gossip goes. What you hear about is, did you hear so-and-so went bankrupt? And you know why they went bankrupt? Because they couldn't handle their money, and on and on and on. And that is in an attempt to make yourself seem better. See, I know so much more. But have you ever noticed that when you gossip, you get gossiped about? It goes two ways. So the book that we've been working out of this month has been Your Sacred Self by Wayne Dyer. And he says the ego is the false idea that we all have about ourselves. So how many of you have a false idea of who you are? And what does that false idea entail? You know, we are not our hair. We are not our bodies. We are not the clothes we wear. We aren't the houses we buy or the furniture we buy or the cars we possess. We aren't how good we are at work. When we die, none of that's going to matter. None of it. What's going to matter is who we are. What are we choosing to be today and for every day? Now, you might say, well, if the ego's so bad, why do we have an ego? Why do we keep it? Well, we keep it out of habit, out of familiarity. After all, we've had that ego since we were children, and everybody encouraged it in one way or another. Maybe our parents had some of these habits that they said over and over again, and you just kind of fell right into that line and followed the same habits. Also, we resist change. Who wants to change? To become peaceful, you have to give up some of these habits, and that can be hard. That can be really difficult. Do you want to go through your life trying to not talk, not gossip, when you're used to gossiping? Do you want to go through your life trying to not compare yourself? It takes effort. It takes effort. And a lot of times people just don't want to put in that effort. It seems too hard. But I'll tell you something, it's a lot harder to stay in that place, because when you just react, you get what the reaction brings instead of having a choice as to what you want in your life. We mustn't forget that the ego strives on fear. It strives to keep you in that place of fear, keep you in that place of trying to not think, basically. Because the opposite of the ego is spirit. And so ego originally was given to us as a tool to put in our toolbox. Why? Because we needed to stay safe. We needed to run when the fire came, or we needed to get out of the way when something was trying to eat us. We needed to stay safe. So ego provided that reaction, that adrenaline, that move to be safe. But it's not our master, and that's what we've made it. We've have over generations and generations found that we thought the ego was who we were instead of a tool that we use. And in adopting the ego as who we are, we move into that place of fear and reaction and have a hard time getting out of it. But it doesn't serve us. It doesn't serve us. And to create a permanent peace, we need to be at peace. It's kind of like if you want a friend, you have to be a friend. If you want love, you have to be loving. You have to be peaceful. And that means looking at these habits that you might be engaging in and making the decision that you want to change them. And there's lots of little tips and ways of changing them. One is to acknowledge that you have this habit and you want to change it. I tell you, a really good way of changing a habit is get somebody to help you. If you ever notice, they're delighted to do that. They will be ready to help you no matter what you ask them. And so one time I was in this habit of kind of a poor me, complaining and that. And I asked my daughter to help me to get out of that. And we had been reading now I can't remember the book, but we had been reading a book. And in the book it had different actions that people do when they find conflict. So one was poor me, another one was being aloof, another one was arguing or being dominating. And so I was asking her to help me get out of this poor me. So one day she comes and I'm complaining about something, and she goes, "Oh, poor me. I think I'll be aloof now and walk off." And believe me, when you get something like that, it kind of jars you awake. And we have this thing when somebody starts complaining in the house, and my husband will go, and I go, "What's that?" And he goes, "The world's smallest violin." So it got me out of the habit of whining very fast. I need to ask for her help for the other one. So you can ask for help in doing this. You can ask for spiritual help in changing. You can ask for people to help you. And like I said, they're very glad to help you in a situation like that. Just make sure that you ask them that when they help you to do it in a way that doesn't condemn you, but does something like she did. She just noticed it and noticed hers and went off. So you want people who are willing to be nice, because you are trying to change a habit. There's a little book, it's called Who Have You Come Here to Be? And if you don't have a lot of variety in your life, this really offers you some. It's got some wonderful little things in it. I want to just read this one quote. "The science is clear. We really are the one we have been waiting for. We create the quality of our lives by who we are being on the inside." And so this little book helps you think about do you want to be? Do you want to be peace today? Do you want to be calm? Do you want to be exciting? Do you want to be edgy? Do you want to be noble? It's got some beautiful pictures to it, too. Do you want to be noble? We forget to do this, to set our intention in the morning when we get up. Set your intention. Who am I today? Who do I want to be today? How do I want to express that? And you can do this in your meditation, you can do this in your treatment work, and it really does help the rest of the day because those thoughts keep percolating. Another way that kind of helps you come back into that peaceful perfection is ask yourself, the way I did it last time, did it work? If you have had a situation where you needed to make a decision, did you react last time, or did you actually come from a place of peace and be able to make a choice about what you want to do? So by asking yourself, did it work last time? Was the way I reacted last time, did that make me peaceful? Did that help me? Or did that make me more chaotic, cause more problems? It's very easy to do, and that simple asking helps jar us out of that place. Also, if you want permanent peace in your life, you're going to have to forgive. I know that sometimes that seems like a dirty word. After all, they did something to you, and why should you forgive them? And many people think that forgiving is condoning. It isn't in the least bit. It doesn't mean that you condone the actions. What it means is you choose to react in a different way. You aren't going to let them win. Because I tell you, when you stay in that state of unforgiveness, you stay in a state of turmoil, which means that you are constantly giving energy. The person who you don't want to forgive, whether it's yourself or others. And when you're always in that state of giving that energy, you don't have any for yourself. You feel tired. And guess what? They've won because they don't care. They don't care whether you've forgiven them necessarily or not. Forgiveness is for us. So be ready to forgive. Forgive yourself primarily and forgive others. Because in every situation, we have to forgive ourselves for putting ourselves in that situation or being around the situation. So work on your forgiveness. And that also means to stop judging. And a nice way of moving past the judgment is to allow yourself to use a mantra. Now, a mantra is a set of words, or it's a phrase of a song, or anything like that you say over and over and over again. So when you come to the stoplight, instead of worrying about where you're going, what you're doing, that person that is slowly crossing the street, you can sit there and do your mantra and allow your mind to go someplace else. So in remembering that the ego is a tool, put it back in the toolbox. That's where it really belongs. We don't really even have much use for it nowadays, except to cause trouble, to make us feel bigger than we really are. But we can put it back in the toolbox and let it reside there so that if a car starts to come rushing at us, it can tell us, move, get out of the way, you'll be safer. But leave it at that. I'd like to close with a quote from Entering the Castle by Carolyn Mays. How do I know if it's my soul talking to me or my imagination? Many people ask. Poetry can touch your soul. A sunset and a warm breeze can suffuse you with profound sensations of love and serenity that make you feel as if you're hovering above the smallness of your life, at one with the greater being. From this spiritual altitude, you have a greater perspective on your problems and stresses. At least for the moment, your faith in God is absolute. But within minutes, your mind starts again asserting itself, and you are unable to sustain this state of consciousness, no matter how hard you want to. But the indelible imprint of that single moment's encounter with the divine remains. No other precious memory can compare. And it is so powerful that you long to return to it. So please join me in a spiritual mind treatment. Oh, there is one life, and that life is God's life. That life is my life, right this very moment. And I recognize the peace deep within, the peace that is spirit. No matter what is happening, even the chaos of creation, there was a peace and intelligence underlying it that made this beautiful universe and all the life in it. So I engage in that peace. I allow the peace of spirit to become the peace of me. I choose to be peace in all that I do so that I see it around me. I speak it. I hear it. I understand that it allows me to live more fully and freely. It allows me to be in perfect health. It allows me to think, to engage in spiritual ideas that are beyond what I've known before. It allows me to touch spirit, to be at one, to allow spirit to infuse me with its love and light and joy. I am truly one with all that is. I give thanks for the wonderful writers that remind us how precious spirit is in all of its grandness. I give thanks for being alive this very moment in this place, and I give thanks for everyone who is in this room, for I know that which I treat for myself is also for each one of us. The truth is, we are one, we are loved, we are at peace. And together we say, and so it is.